Welcome to today's #Wednesdays Weekly, a weekly information session in collaboration with voluntary sector and public sector partners. Today's session is focused on Alcohol Awareness Week and it will be delivered by Julian Cohen from Turning Point. Over to you, Julian.
Hi there, thank you for inviting me today. My name's Julian, Community Development for Rochdale Oldham Active Recovery. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can you see that now?
We will be able to. Yeah. Just need to start that.
So I work across both borders, but mainly in Rochdale. Why is it not moving?
You can, if you just click from beginning again, Julian, it'll bring it up for you.
Is that now doing it?
Yeah, I think there's just a little bit of a lag, that's all.
Okay, yeah, there is. So Turning Point is an organisation, it's quite a large organisation. We are the leading social enterprise providing health, social care services across England. So quite a lot of experience in health and well-being. And we also, as an agency, have a residential rehab, one in Oldham and one in Workington as well, which the one in Workington is quite good because it's exclusive and it will take dogs as well, which is unusual for rehabs. We also, of course, have Smithfield, which is our detox unit. And we've just been awarded, which is, we're privileged to get that from both Rochdale and Oldham, the latest contract to continue to provide services, which we thank both Oldham and Rochdale councils. So Alcohol Change are, I suppose, really, they're one of those organisations that do quite a lot of campaigning, a lot of awareness events, and the Alcohol Change website has absolutely amazing, brilliant, tons of really evidence-based information that might actually be useful for you to have a look at. It looks around what alcohol is, what the harms are, and it also suggests that it's time to change the way we view our relationship in society and how we use alcohol. And the reason for this is we know that 200,000 children live with an alcoholic person. We know that 5 million family members are affected by someone with an alcohol issue. I've been in Rochdale Library all this week doing a stand and an awareness event, and I've had, just as an example, even getting people to talk about it, I had somebody working there whose brother had recently died of alcohol. I've had someone else who was married to someone with an alcoholic. And I've had an asylum seeker and refugee who's drinking alcohol, and it was quite openly starting to talk about it because it gets people talking, this event around the trauma that he suffered in Sudan, and that's the reason he's drinking. So what I was able to do there was actually refer quite quickly into our service. We've got a 5-step family carer worker and also for our treatment service. It's becoming quite big now for the NHS. We're talking £3.5 billion. So it's quite an amount when you think about all the demands that our NHS has. We talk 167,000 working years are lost to alcohol. So that gain in terms of sort of employers and employment to get people to think about alcohol, to talk about alcohol is really important. And I did have, again, quite a few workers from Rochdale Council just coming up to me and having that little chat to say, you know what, I think I drink a little bit too much. And what we can do is we can have a 10-question alcohol use disorders identification test, the audit, and they can do a quick 10-step screening, dead simple, but it gets them talking. Think about the average UK drinker. It's amazing. This is £62,899 on alcohol in a lifetime. It's a lot. And £27 billion per year, crime, health, and lost productivity, and 1.25 million visits to hospital. If anyone's been in A&E on a Friday, Saturday night, or any night, you'll usually find someone with an alcohol issue that actually turns up at A&E. So Alcohol Change, this is the whole idea of what we're looking at, is the aspiration of Alcohol Change is that we have Britain with alcohol, but without the harm. And if we get that, we've got a healthier and happier place for us all. So that's the aspiration. The theme this year, there we go, just to get an idea of what the general public face, is this sort of the way our relationship currently is with alcohol. don't know if everyone's ever been to Sweden, Scandinavia. They certainly don't sell alcohol in this way. It's very much more controlled and governed. So we look at alcohol as a substance. We know it's absorbed so quickly into the bloodstream, 5 to 10 minutes. We look at how the absorption rate's affected by, and this is the sort of thing that we talk about, food in the stomach, strength of the drink. We look at body size. We know smaller people get drunk quicker as a rule. And we look at gender. Women absorb alcohol quicker than men. At age, we know that younger and older people process alcohol slowly, so alcohol stays in the body longer. And I suppose the importance of Alcohol Awareness Week is around people when they're drinking, how they're drinking impacts not just on them, but on other people. The theme this year is costs. It's around what are the costs of alcohol, and we know that it's probably the most powerful chemical that has such a wide range of adverse effects. And this is on almost every part of the body, including the brain, bones, and heart. There's very few substances that can actually impact on the body in such a negative way if people consume more than the government recommended units. So just going to go off this quickly, but 1 to 2 units is the bit that gets your heart rate speeding up. Blood vessels expand and you feel a bit warmer, sociable, talkative feeling, and associated with moderate drinking. So the government did actually, and have always done 2 to 3 units for a male, and it used to be 3 to 4 units for a male, and it used to be 2 to 3 units for a female. But that was changed quite quickly. So it's now 2 to 3 units for both. 4 to 6 units, we know that the brain and central nervous system, these are the 2 sort of organs that we're looking at that start to get effective. The brain associated with judgment decision making, and it can cause you to be more reckless and also disinhibited. Alcohol starts to impair cells in the nervous system, make you feel lightheaded, and it can affect reaction time and coordination. By the time you get to 8 to 9 units, your reaction time will be much slower. Speech can start to slur and your vision will begin to lose focus. Your liver, which filters alcohol out of the body, now starts to be unable to remove all the alcohol. So that's now starting to affect the actual liver itself. If you do take certain medications as well, which are metabolized via the liver, then that could also put the liver in extra difficulty, or also for any reason that the liver's not working as well as it should. This is when I would start to look at, we educate people around the 10 to 12 unit mark, where we're talking about coordination becoming impaired and the risks of accidents. The alcohol now is in the second phase, which we class as the depressant effect on both mind and body, and it can make you drowsy. The amount of alcohol starts to reach, and we actually start to say 12 units is the toxic, poisonous level of alcohol. And it's less alcohol is leaving the body via the urine. But also, we know alcohol is a dehydrant, so actually in the morning you could actually wake up with a severe headache. Excess amount of alcohol in your system can upset digestion, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and indigestion. And I think some of the advertising now for younger people is the word anxiety around alcohol. So it's actually sort of teaching people that actually alcohol, being a depressant drug, can lead to feelings of anxiousness, depression, and low mood. And continual drinking like that could make sure that it becomes something that can become quite prominent. The more than 12 units we're looking at is definitely becoming more challenging for the liver. And now we're looking at 1 hour to remove 1 unit of alcohol from the body, which means that if people are drinking and drive in the morning, then they might be possibly over the limit. Near me, there's people that I know that drive lorries, they commercial vehicle drivers, and I know sometimes that their drinking can be excessive, that puts them over the limit. And it's a case of advice, information, talking. I'll always tell people 1 unit per hour. So we're looking at things where it interferes with breathing, heart rate, the gag reflex, which prevents you choking, which means people over 12 units could be more likely to choke on vomit during the night, or even go into a coma. That would be more likely if they're mixing it with depressant drugs like methadone, heroin, diazepam, or any of the benzodiazepine range. So what are these costs? And this is what we're getting to people to think about. We have pictures of houses so people can do risk assessments to look at the house, but the simple ones is slips, trips and falls. I've worked in the hospital alcohol liaison department, and the amount of people that are in hospital that have slipped, tripped and fallen is quite high. Unprotected sex, we know that's a feature as well due to alcohol disinhibition. That can have lifelong issues. We know domestic violence, we know that alcohol's implicated. There was an advertising campaign, One Punch Could Kill, so around the nighttime economy disturbances, and there have been some quite horrible cases where people have died, where someone's hit someone. Sexual assaults, we look at the cases where alcohol is implicated. Abuse to local environments, we don't always think so much about the local environment, but even people going to the chip shop, coming home, throwing bottles, there's considerable abuse to the town centres and the countryside just by people drinking. Racially aggravated incidents, that can be quite common, particularly in towns where you have BME communities. Property damage, drink driving, antisocial behaviour, people losing things, might lose important things. We also see quite common people going to get drugs to increase the night. So start off with alcohol, that's just the gateway to having even more fun, and the relationships, family breakdown. So that's quite a lot of costs, just simply at any level. I had a little look at a bit deeper and just chatting to people this week in Rochdale, in the library, families, and this was the one that can be left absolutely devastated by bereavement of somebody who's died through alcohol. We've had intermarriage homicide. I remember when working in Oldham, it's quite sad where it's drip, drip, drip domestic violence, but then the personal domestic violence situation has had alcohol and killed the partner. So it's not common, thank God, but it does happen. We have had quite a deaths of innocence due to incident of drink driver. And then we look at the contracting a complex STI, which can have a profound effect on rest of life. So we look at things like perhaps HIV, we look at things like hepatitis C, and those are something that can really have that profound for the rest of life, just for one night. Breakdown in trust within relationships due to infidelity. We know that over the past 10 years, the alcohol deaths have increased throughout the whole of the UK. It tends to be similar in most areas, but I think that's also the fact that just because of people getting older but drinking longer, people going around treatment a number of different times means that they're more likely to get unwell. Long-term admissions to mental health wards, and I've worked with people that have had life imprisonment due to manslaughter charges. Again, through drink, something's happened in a pub or in a house. It's in the news every week where there have been deaths in houses. So I've talked enough, and I'm just going to carry on about the costs, but I have a fabulous volunteer who works with us, who does absolutely so much fantastic stuff, as someone with lived experience, to actually show and demonstrate how she has got to recovery, and her name's Denise, so I'm going to put her on.
Do it. Hiya. Oh, hiya, everybody. Yeah, I'm a bit nervous, so you'll have to bear with me. Yeah, I've been in addiction for, in and out of addiction for over 30 years. I did have periods in that time where I was sober, but the addiction used to come back, flood my life with all the things that Julian has just spoke about. When I look at the costs that it's cost me, yeah, financially it's cost me, but that is nothing compared to what it's done to me emotionally, mentally. A broken marriage. I was married for 30 odd years, and alcohol paid a lot into that for the breakdown of the marriage. 2 children, 2 boys that, you know, them growing up with an alcoholic mum, how hard was that for them? I didn't care. I still wanted my alcohol. I didn't consider how it affected them. The years that I've lost as also, that is what bothers me. The 30 odd years of my life that has gone down the drain without me even thinking about it, but just concentrating on what I wanted, and that was alcohol. Yeah, and like the falls, the injuries, brain injuries, metal rods in my arm, just not caring about anything, my own well-being, my own welfare, me everything. I lost everything. I didn't want to live, but I didn't want to give up alcohol. So it, you know, and I used it as an excuse for everything, you know, any little bit of upset, any little bit of trauma, I'd be there. Yeah, I need that. It's what helps me get through whatever it is. If you had my life, you'd use alcohol. If you've gone through what I've gone through, you'd use alcohol. But, you know, what I've learned now is, you know, things are going to happen that aren't good, that aren't bad, that are bad, that are going to cause me stress. But, you know I've got a choice now that I've got a choice either to have a drink or not have a drink. And I always choose now not to have a drink, because I know where I'll end up. I'll end up back in that chair, drinking, not moving, and being sick, and everything else that comes with it. And I, you know, engaging with Turning Point changed my life. It changed the way I thought, the way I behaved, the way I received feedback from other people. Instead of being negative and looking for the bad side of everything, I now try and look at, you know, the opposite side. And, you know, it works for me. I talked about my 2 boys. I've got a really good relationship with one of my sons. He's very forgiving. He's quite like me. He's quite soft and, you know, gentle person. And I've got one with my eldest son, who I'm still working really hard to build that relationship with, because I think he may think, oh, yeah, my mum's doing really well, but is she going to go back to that addiction? Can I trust her? So there's, you know, and I totally understand it. I understand the way he thinks, you know, how he feels. Well, I don't understand how he feels, but I tried to understand it, you know, and I've never sat down and talked to him about my addiction. You know, I've never asked them how they felt about it, how it made them feel. You know, growing up and their friends, and, you know, they must have come across some abuse about me being an alcoholic and what have you. Yeah, I was fun. I was great fun, yeah, when I was drunk. I was great fun when I was getting over the drink. But I didn't have a social life. I didn't have friends. I had people that had come and take advantage of me. But again, I used to take advantage of them. You know, I used to manipulate them, you know. So, yeah, you know, and the one thing I did get from coming here to Turning Point is I had to get honest with myself. I had to be realistic. I had to take responsibility for a lot of things that I've done. You know, so yeah, I now I live for my recovery, and I'll do whatever it takes to stay in recovery. And if it means me volunteering every single day, I'll do it every single day, because it helps me. It keeps me on the right track, you know. So yeah, just a little bit about me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Denise. And Denise, it's gold just to have somebody like Denise, because even today in the drop-in, she's walking around the reception, she's talking to people, she's talking about her own experience. It's giving encouragement, giving hope and optimism that everyone can get to recovery, but also to be realistic about the costs that their addiction at that point is for them. I'm not going to go over too much on this, but we know alcohol misuse again costs the biggest risk factor for death, ill health and disability for 15 to 49-year-olds. Now the 5th biggest risk factor across all ages. So we are looking to sort around alcohol. It is a public health concern. 24% of adults drink regularly beyond safe drinking levels. It's a lot. Unmet need for alcohol treatment in Rochdale, 78%, where in Oldham, whereas nationally it's 82%. That's not current. They have got that down, but it is the fact that there are a lot of people that actually don't even, I think like Denise would say, they may be using alcohol but don't even recognise at that point that they've got a problem, although they have. 2020 saw a big increase in alcohol specific deaths compared to 2019, and the thing I suppose that we've got to look at, and all of us as partner agencies, it's the most marginalised and the deprived group, which we would expect are the ones that are suffering mental behavioural disorders as well. So it is a complex situation, and of course ourselves, Turning Point, we absolutely love partnership working with all agencies so that we can get the best possible outcome for our clients. We have a great relationship with Action Together, which works brilliantly. We look at our clients starting treatment, 76% actually have a mental health need. This is in Rochdale and Oldham throughout our treatment service, whereas nationally it's 59%. So there's something there that obviously we've looked at, and we have a dual diagnosis worker specifically as well to start looking at how we can support that and work with Rochdale and Oldham services. Alcohol clients are presenting later than elsewhere, so more entrenched dependence with the complex physical mental health conditions. So that again is a challenge where sometimes we get referrals and it's a bit late. The person's either something's going on or is even at end of life, and that's what we don't want. We want the early intervention. Opiate using populations older and coexistence with alcohol, and also mixing drugs together we see, and the younger population we're seeing more cocaine use as well, powdered cocaine. There was cost. When we look at costs, the Tony Blair government of Labour did spend quite a bit of money. They actually created an alcohol learning centre, and I don't know if anyone can remember any of the advertising campaigns, but there was one around alcohol causes hidden harm, and that was really quite straightforward. You're drinking, but actually this is what it's doing. Can anybody remember any others from the Tony Blair advertising campaigns? Can anybody remember any if they want to shout out an advertising campaign from the 90s? Just to wake you up this. Does anybody remember there was a glass and somebody did a free in the glass? So it was a frosted glass and they were doing free with it. They did good drink driving ones, which were quite graphic as well. We know this is where the costs are. People drink more when they're at home from shop purchases. So people pour out more than they would if they were in a pub. The alcohol industry as well, it's, it can pull people in because it knows exactly what to do. Create ciders, make them refreshing, forest fruits, rhubarb gin and stuff like that. So again, it's pulling people in. And that may pull people in that have not had a drink problem before because they start to like a particular drink. We still know a lot of people don't know what units are, how to work them out. And we also know that some people don't believe that the government recommended amounts actually mean anything. Public health is really important. For public health to work, it has to be continual and constant. When you get cutbacks in public health and the funding of it, then we find that the issues and the cost of alcohol start to increase again. We know that treatment, like all healthcare interventions, suffered from cutbacks over the years. But I think the good thing about sort of services like Turning Point, we've we're quite creative, we're quite we have ingenuity, and we will work in really smart ways to make sure that everyone gets a really effective and good treatment pathway. This is where we start to look at costs. This is going to be quite graphic in terms of what it does. And the simple thing is, it actually affects every organ of the body. I'm not going to go through this, but I've worked in the field a long, long time, and I've seen some sites, some horrible sites, particularly where somebody has come to end of life, and their exact words are, I really wish I'd dealt with my alcohol issue a long, long time ago. I wish I'd taken treatment seriously. I wish I'd listened. And it's the same with any addiction. I've had addiction, smoking, a whole range of things. While I was in addiction, I didn't want to face it. But when the reality starts to hit home, you actually think, I wish I'd have done it earlier. A little bit like Denise said, I wish I'd have done it earlier because I'd have had more of a better life. And we're getting that now with Denise, because we're having a laugh. We're having a laugh in recovery. We're enjoying recovery. Hayley, are you going to send copies of the presentation to people?
Yeah, I can do.
Yeah, so this is something that's sort of really useful. When I worked in the GP surgery and in community, I would have a body map, probably not as horrific as that. It might be a little bit softer, but I used to let people look at it and ask them what they thought. And usually people would sort of say, well, do you know what? My grandma, my granddad, or my uncle. And I actually am starting to get a little bit of this happening or that happening. I've been to my doctor. I've got high blood pressure. I've been diagnosed with high triglycerides. I've been diagnosed with a bit of memory loss as well as I'm getting older. And we start to say, well, hold up, whereabouts do you think alcohol would be impacting on you in a negative way? And you usually get people who are quite receptive. So actually, it does damage every organ of the body. The usual one we think about is liver problems. Or we can look at quite unusual and complex forms of dementias as well. So there's so much. So you're going to get the slides. You can have a quick look at that. There's one that's quite self-explanatory. We don't want to, if people are getting fatty liver, then that's a sort of a warning sign that things are starting to go wrong. And nowadays, with new modern FibroScan equipment, it's a lot easier to do scans of livers. We can find out a lot more what the costs are of somebody's drinking. And we're quite clear to say, if you were to carry on drinking, your liver may go from fatty to fibrosis to cirrhosis. So it's about just saying, let's have a look, let's see what's going on. And also to explain what the conditions, how your body will actually start to change as you move through. And the more evidence-based factual information that we can give, the better. That is a clear example of jaundice and liver damage. So again, it's quite graphic. 7 types of cancer. When we look at things like alcohol itself, a lot of people don't realise that we're looking at mouth, throat, larynx, esophagus, breast, in women, breast cancer, liver and bowel. We have obviously good screening campaigns now, but we're looking at actually the implication of alcohol, so people can again start to look around a holistic health and well-being lifestyle and think around how alcohol may impact in a negative way. Suppose within treatment, these again costs. The fetal alcohol syndrome. It's not common, but I know working in the field, when I've seen a client that I've had my suspicions of that fetal alcohol spectrum or disorders or syndromes in the children. Now, if we're seeing the next generation of parents who drank alcohol, we know that that child is going to have very much barriers to their own personal life as they develop. There are quite clear characteristics. The good thing is, and all within Rochdale, a lot of agencies are very on board with the Drymester campaign. So the Drymester campaign is around educating people around that if they are to use alcohol, to ensure that if they're exposed to pregnancy, that they make sure they get contraception. But it's also to cascade and give them the knowledge around that alcohol during pregnancy is no alcohol at all. And there have been confusing messages previously from previous public health information that, oh, you can just have one. Even today, I think at the library, there was somebody talking about it saying, yeah, but my mum drank and smoked when she was pregnant and she was okay. But we want to give that clear evidence-based information about smoking and alcohol during pregnancy is a no-no. The fetal alcohol spectrum disorders and syndromes there's quite a lot of things. Again, when we look at costs, it's around what it can cause. So we can think learning difficulties, and we do know we have seen increases in autism and ADHD generally. Is it the fact it's getting more diagnosed? It could be that. Problems with language, lack of appropriate social boundaries, over-friendliness with strangers, poor short-term memory, inability to grasp instructions, and also failure to learn from the consequences of actions. This is only a small portion of it. Egocentricity, mixing reality and fiction, difficulty with group social interaction, poor problem-solving, planning, hyperactivity, poor attention, and poor coordination. So if you look at that, and you look at adults that may later on get diagnosis of bipolar or borderline personality disorder, there's definitely crossovers, and it would be really interesting to find out a little bit more when we look at alcohol costs, how much fetal alcohol spectrum disorders and cases that we have in the general population, but there's only been small projects which are looking at that. It would be really interesting because that again is the cost of alcohol. So when we start to look at the issues of how much is too much, it's quite simple now. We're going to stick with the lower risk, no more than 2 to 3 units per day on a regular basis, and it's exactly the same for women. Where we look at increasing risk, if people are drinking more to 2 to 3 units per day on a regular basis, that's where the costs are going to start happening, and they may not be apparent early on. For some people get away with drinking for a long time, and they don't seem to have a lot of costs. But then you see other people get the costs and the harms start a lot earlier. Everyone's individual. Where we work with particularly is more than 6 units per day on a regular basis or more. Bear in mind, 6 units is only 2 large glasses of wine. If that's being drunk on a regular basis and you're hitting more than 35 units per week, we're then starting to say there's definitely going to be some harm. It could be hidden harm at first, but as you go through life, there's going to be definitely things happen. Why do we drink? What's going on? Why are we like this? And why have we got to where we are? Well, historical, cultural, societal reasons. You think of our long history, you can go back to the 19th century, and there's evidence of issues around alcohol in some artwork, in historical documents, social and economic history. Irish particularly coming over had a heavy drinking culture. The traveller culture can have a heavy drinking culture. It can be predominantly males, or it can be both male and females. I think something we look at is we're no longer a manufacturing-based economy, and service industry-led economies are based on alcohol, food and entertainment. We had 24-hour drinking brought in under the Blair government. The 24-hour licensing and being able to sell alcohol 24 hours has probably not helped the situation. And I know Scotland have changed away from a 24-hour drinking culture. Economic activity for various reasons. So we're looking at people, more retired people, more people on long-term sickness. The COVID, we had an increase in alcohol during COVID of about 30%. We know if you make anything available, make it more available, more people will get addicted, and hence there'll be costs with that. So that's again another problem. You know, you look at the vaping shops, the more vaping shops you put, the more people will take up vaping. Low cost, particularly at home. I know alcohol in terms of real terms compared to when I was a kid, to buy it to use at home is a hell of a lot less. With deprivation marginalised communities, we know that's always going to present problems. You know, if you look at deprivation marginalised communities, the shops that they tend to get have to be sell it cheap, pile it high, stronger alcohol content, when what those shops really need is fresh fruit and vegetables and good healthy food. But unfortunately, you don't get that connection. Mental health, people's mental health, stress, problems, poor problem solving, lack of resiliency, breakdown in communities as well, where people don't know people in communities, people too busy all the time. I put we drink because we're British. It was someone in the library when I was doing this said, we drink because we're British. And I was saying, what do you mean? And they actually bought football, holidays abroad. We just have that reputation. So I put that down just because someone in the library gave me that one. Not everybody, of course. So what do we do? Treatment. We're going to come to the end now, and I've spoke quite a bit. We do brief interventions. Early interventions for me it's massively important. Simple conversations, and that can be anywhere, in pharmacies, in A&E, in your doctor's surgery. It can even have in leaflets in hairdressers and in barbers. And I think that's something, again, we need to start, myself probably getting out into the community a little bit more after COVID as well. One-to-one support, we give one-to-one support. We do what we call psychosocial interventions. We have loads of different types of workshops. We can look at complex treatment where we tailor a detox and help people with reducing their alcohol so it's safe to do so. We have inpatient medical assisted detox. We can use Smithfield. We can use Chapman Barker unit. We have post-treatment aftercare in the community. We can also put the funding in for residential rehab. And we also have a range of medications which can help and support relapse. So treatment itself is quite comprehensive. It's really effective at helping someone when they're ready to start saying, right, the costs of my use of alcohol have now exceeded so much the benefits of using alcohol. I'm going to go to the service and talk about how it can change. And then we look at the asset-based model of community support. This is what I really sort of work around, supporting people, how they can get to a mutual aid meeting, an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Alcoholics Anonymous meetings are free of charge. They are in every town, sometimes have more than one meeting. You can go every day of the afternoon, evening, and the Alcoholics Anonymous fellowship model works brilliantly well for, you know, millions all over the world, following more or less a similar format. We know within Greater Manchester we have young people's AA meetings, we have LGBTQIA meetings, plus meetings. We do Smart Recovery, which is self-management recovery training. So that's actually what we call a rational emotive behavioural therapy group, similar to CBT, and we do that here on a Friday at 3 o'clock. We're working and we're really establishing really close links with Living Well, because we've been working with them on the stand at Alcohol Awareness Week. Thinking Ahead and Mind, we're always doing stuff with Mind and working with Thinking Ahead. High Level, we have good relationships with, again, they do recovery. They do some brilliant stuff for people as they move in, out of treatment. We've got Recovery Republic out in Hayward. We don't want to forget them. They do some brilliant stuff. They have mental health support. They have workshops there. We've got Sanctuary, the Reaching Out Centre. They've got men's groups. They've got women's groups. They've got AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, and Narcotics Anonymous. There's a lot going on there. You know, again, a lot of the people that work there are in recovery, and we will link and work closely with them. Really interesting. The new modern things that are coming are your CIC, so your Be Sober, where you subscribe to it, and they do social activities, sober social activities. A friend of mine, Ben Riley, does dry raves, so it's a rave which is dry. The last one I went to, 500 people, all abstinent, out dancing in the centre of Manchester in a nightclub. There's a new sober lounge which has opened on a Thursday in Manchester, where people can go and to connect. And there's a bunch of women in, I think it's in Southport or on the Wirral, called Flamingo AF, that are doing stuff. So we've got a lot of things happening for people. It's just, I suppose, today and this week is really about people thinking about what are the costs of alcohol to themselves, to the community, to their friends, families, neighbours, anyone. What are these costs? And actually, if those costs are starting to get too high, we actually start to think about change. What can be done out of our service? Minimum unit pricing has come in Scotland, so it's 50p a unit, which takes the ciders out of the 139, 239, 339. That used to be the price point, but they've gone up quite a lot. The black cans, so high strength lagers, black cans have gone up in Scotland, but not in England. And I know my MP is on the alcohol AAPG and alcohol group in Westminster, and they're looking at it in England, but it's something that there's resistance to it due to the fact that we are a service industry-led economy. Public health campaigns will work, but they're expensive, and we know that with lack of money, good public health campaigns cost a lot. Education in schools is sacrosanct. More of that is definitely needed. Reduce availability, is that going to happen? Again, you'd have to start looking at a different type of economy, different licensing laws. Going to take time. Restrictions on advertising, that has happened in some areas, in certain sports. Larger health awareness notices on the bottles. If anybody's ever had a bottle of alcohol and looks for the notices, they're very, very hard to see, particularly if you start getting to my age and you're like that with your glasses. To see the actual how much units and what the health harm of that drink is, it's hard. Move away from service industry-led economy. I mentioned that before. We can support sober movements and sober activity-based projects. And I know Action Together are really good at sort of helping and support small organic movements that do occur, where they can provide alternatives, where people can actually connect, where alcohol's not there. So as usual, Action Together are always helping in that area. We can use social media for inspiring recovery journeys. You know, I look at TikTok sometimes in the evening, and you see people talking about their journey, talking about how it's worked for them, and how well they're doing. And for me, more brief interventions in communities in as many places as possible. So there's my quick solution of how we can support them and reduce the costs. Thank you very much. And Denise, I've lost Denise, which is a shame, because I wanted to answer questions. So you'll have to have any questions answered by me. Has anybody got any questions?
I'm just going to quickly stop the recording before we have any questions.